Our guest tonight is Dr. Chambers from Orem, Utah. Dr. Chambers holds a doctorate degree from Brigham Young University. He's worked in the private sector for more than 18 years as a nutritional consultant. He owns a company called NutriPerfect that produces nutritional supplements that by experience can positively affect your health as viewed by blood analysis. Dr. Chambers, I see that you have a sample of blood underneath the microscope here, and I'd like to ask you a couple of questions about it. First of all, what's the importance of looking at live blood versus dried blood?
As opposed to taking blood and sending it off to a laboratory, when blood arrives in a laboratory, it's usually dead blood. They do various counts, and there's some interesting things they do. However, live cell analysis looks at blood the way it is flowing through your veins, arteries, capillaries, and vessels. The red blood cell is literally live on a slide, and it's protected with a cover slide so the oxygen doesn't get to it. And it shows many features, including the roundness, the separation, and the uniformity of the red blood cells, where many things start to happen when oxygen hits blood. So if it's been taken off of a finger properly, through a simple finger stick, applied to a slide, and applied to the microscope appropriately, then it should be very normal looking blood without any anomalies.
Okay, good. What we'll do then is next zoom in on the television monitor itself, and perhaps you can point out the red and the white blood cells as a starting point, and then we'll take a look at the actual blood.
You want me to go into
itself?
this a little bit?
Oh,
Okay.
Yep.
The red blood cells that you're looking on the screen are still floating through the plasma. Red blood cells are the instrument that carries oxygen into the system, carries nutrient values into the system. They pull carbon dioxide and waste products out of the system and deliver hormones. They're supposed to be round, uniform in size and shape, and they're supposed to be very separated. This blood right here is an example of what they discovered in France in about 1850 that's called rouleau. And rouleau is where red blood cells stick on top of each other and not circulating well. Many people that have a rouleau condition, we call it sticky blood or sludge blood, will also have cold hands and cold feet. Sometimes it causes muddled thinking or drawing mental blanks. Red blood cells function much better when they are separated, and these, as you can see on the screen, are stuck together.
I've heard that there's a lack of electrical charge, that if a cell is properly, has a negative charge to it, that the cells keep separated. Is that?
Often when red blood cells have been energized, like you say, with the electrical charge or have a certain frequency, as we call it, it happens by virtue of motion and activity and exercise. When a person's been out jogging around the block, when they're in a high amounts of exercise and activity, red blood cells generally will separate by themselves. Unfortunately, if the pancreas has been taxed to the point where you're not getting all of the proper proteases to digest proteins, proteins left in the system are sticky. And as sticky blood happens to be in this case, the protein covering the membrane of the red blood cell, one red blood cell gets close to another one and they stick on top of each other. Therefore, we try to upgrade the pancreas by using more live raw whole foods, and by eating more raw foods in the process, it takes the load off the pancreas restores itself, and then finally you get more of those proteases that I mentioned to separate the blood. But nonetheless, even by virtue of exercise, often red blood cells can separate during that exercise period.
Great, thank you. How about white blood cells? Can we take a look and see? And
We'll look through here for just a moment and see if we just bump into a white blood cell, because you should have one white blood cell for every 600 to 800 red blood cells. And of course, I'm going through several of the red blood cells here. And there's a white blood cell right there, and that happens to be the most common one, that's called a neutrophil. And neutrophils generally are very granular, they're very active, and the activation in a neutrophil takes place by virtue of lymphatics secreting appropriately in the system. Lymphatics will secrete by virtue of motion again. When a person's moving their head, their arms, and their legs, lymphatics will secrete. jumping up and down on a trampoline or a mini tramp, and even massage therapy helps in the process of activating white blood cells to make them functional.
Maybe what we can do now is have you go through the slide, take a look, and point out any irregularities or abnormalities or regularities you may see on the cells. So
One of the things that we're noticing on this particular slide, besides the sticky blood from poor digestion of protein, there are some features here where the red blood cells are showing a parasitic infestation. Where the parasite came from, we don't know, but for instance, right in here, there is a red blood cell and has a very strange shape to it because a parasite has actually penetrated the membrane of the red blood cell, and as it penetrates the membrane of the red blood cell, it actually goes inside it, and in it, if you would, sucks the nutrient values out of the red blood cell, and it changes the shape from its normal roundness to have an aberration or a strange shape based on the size of the parasite that may be in it. As we look through here, we'll look for some more. Here's one here. This red blood cell is over the top of another one, but the red blood cell shape here, and if it can be detected with the camera, you can even see it wiggling a little bit because there's a living microorganism in there, and it's called a parasite. And often parasites do destroy prematurely the age of the red blood cell, causing problems and sometimes illness with the individual that has them. Here's another red blood cell over the top of another one. It's very, very small, and it's where a parasite's actually gone into the membrane of the red blood cell.
what's the life expectancy of a red blood cell?
A red blood cell lives for about 120 days, and in that 4-month period, they are completely and fully mature as far as their size. Once a red blood cell has been formed in the bone marrow and comes into the bloodstream, it doesn't get any bigger, it doesn't get any smaller, and it lives for 4 months.
See. We'll let you kind of go through that slide and show any other abnormalities.
I might point out that the parasites, again, reduces the lifespan of the red blood cell, and it may only live 2 or 3 weeks because of the parasite. If the parasite comes out and starts floating through the plasma and is caught up with a white blood cell attacking it, because the white blood cell is a major portion of our immune system, the white blood cell will kill it before it can go into the membrane of another red blood cell. I'm also noticing here and there, and it's hard to see on this page, but there's a scalloped edge on the membrane of this red blood cell. We call that free radical damage, and often smokers have that, but you don't have to be a smoker to have them. It also comes from toxins, chemicals, pollution, getting hands into household cleaners, breathing carbon monoxide, and other things can cause what's called free radical damage or other types of irregular